Welcome aboard the Tabletop Express, everybody. This is Tabletop Talk, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Patrick and Eric. Patrick and Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate you joining me on a Saturday morning.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Hey, thanks.
Can you tell everybody just really quick a little bit about both of yourselves? I know you guys podcast, and I want to make sure that people are aware of where they can kind of find you and hear you guys more on the daily.
All right. So, Patrick, why don't you tell them about our podcast?
Sure. Well,
your name does come first.
Okay, thanks. Eric and I used to be on a podcast called What Did You Play This Week, which is a long-running podcast of 100 or so contributors. I exaggerate there.
Slightly.
And Eric and I would do a little thing that spun off called the Conversation Show, where I would interview people. And I would always like to have a second chair, somebody that would help me interview people in case we got dead air or something. And our buddy Mason said that Eric and I had a really good chemistry when we were on the show together, and thought we should have a show. And that was kind of like a joke almost, because Mason's always silly. So What Did You Play This Week sort of kind of faded out. And I said, Eric, let's do that show that Mason suggested. So we started Patrick and Eric in the morning, and Eric actually came up with that. Yeah. Because he's a big fan of community.
Yeah. Troy and Abed in the
morning. Right. So that's kind of where the name of the show came up.
I looking at the logo, I was thinking about that. I was like, this has got to be community reference going on.
Exactly.
It is. And that's their logo. And it made it so it was pretty low effort too. I just stole their logo and just rewrote it.
And that is the absolute total theme of our show. It's sort of community. It's, we have no goals. We have no pledge thing. We have no.
Yeah, we are the community
schedule.
College of podcasting.
Yes, we have no schedule.
No ambition.
No ambition to go anywhere, do anything.
But have fun, right?
We have fun.
And that's what it is.
It really is.
As long as we get to chat and catch up and have fun, it gives us an excuse to play some games together and occasionally to preview something or
that
just keeps us connected, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we're talking about fun today because I think the topic that we're really focused on today is this idea of teaching board games, teaching modern board games specifically. And I want to go just kind of to break the ice a little bit here with what's the first game that you remember playing when you were younger? What was like that first game, that introductory game to the world of board games? And this obviously can go back to, in this case, probably some classic games that you probably played as a kid.
I'll field this one first. And just for the record, I still have both of these. And it's Candyland and it's Chutes and Ladders. Nice. And I still, for whatever reason, my mom saved them. And when I had kids, she's like, oh, here, I've had these in the basement or the attic or something for, the last 30 years. Take and I still have, and it's, it's the old 1980s Milton Bradley copies of those games. And, they get ragged on a lot. There's no actual decisions to be made in them, but they're good. And it's in the same way the early Hobbit games will teach you just how to take a turn, how to draw a card, how to, roll a die, whatever. And just, the structure of a game without having to, think about what it is you're doing.
Right. Patrick, what about you?
We were huge gaming cards and other board games as a family. We played a ton of Clue. I like Eric, I think I have our original family Clue game. It's in bits and pieces, but still, it's the original in my house. And a more rare one is a really crazy game called the Bermuda Triangle that I've actually found a copy on eBay, and we have. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Eric, did we play? We played that at Granite Game Summit.
No, sir.
Oh, you didn't play it? Maybe it was
no. We played some wacky games, but we didn't play. I did not play Bermuda Triangle with you.
So the Bermuda Triangle has this plastic disc that's about half an inch off the table, and you have these little plastic chips, like from Battleship, with magnets in them, and you move them around on the board. You're doing like a pickup and delivery. You're moving them around the board, and this cloud moves around the board based on spin mechanic, I think. And as it rotates, the little magnets in the disc pick up your ships because it's the Bermuda cloud. And if your ships all get eaten up, you're out of the game. which we might talk about later. You lose your pieces, you get thrown out of the game. It's kind of stupid fun. Anyway, it was a silly game, but actually I remembered playing it as a kid. My brother had it, and then I went over to my buddy's house, who's like a game designer, and he had it. And I was like, I remember that game. I've got to get that again. So I found it on eBay because I do that.
So we actually just on here, I had a conversation. It was last week about our favorite games published before the year 2000.
Yes.
And one of the things I actually mentioned on that was Stratego. It was
there you go.
Monopoly was my first game that I ever played, but Stratego stood out as one of the older ones because I still love it. It's still a game I would put to the table on any day. I love Stratego, and I have you can't see it, but to the left of me, I have a small table. And on that table is my original copy of Stratego. The box is obliterated. I took a photo the other day actually where I'm holding up the top of the box. It's done. But on the back, because this is what they did, there's the rules. Because we think now with modern games, you've got these nice rule books. Like a lot goes into the rule books now, sometimes too much. And here it is right on the back of the cover. So you lose the cover, you lost the rules. Which is something with those games I was chuckling about. But I do mention Monopoly, and it makes me think of a question that's on my mind, which is, what is the big difference right now between these classic games and these modern games? And are those lines kind of blurring? And I say that because you go to Target as an example now, and you see quite a mix of games. I mean, Seven Wonders, the new version is in the store, and a lot of these other games are in there. So where is that difference now with the classic versus the modern game?
All right, I have to jump in and be a pedant for a second. I think your question is actually a little different than you're asking it. Well, in my opinion, when you say classic games, I'm thinking chess and Go and Mancala. I think you're asking mass market games and modern games.
That's a fair point. So what is the difference? I guess really from I think you're accurate. So really, let's try that again with the idea of what is that mass market game versus the modern game, and because you're right, that's kind of where it's blurred. There are mass market games that are modern, but some of them, the classics of a chess or a checkers or something like that, which definitely classics, are mass market as well.
I think there's definitely a blurring with our hobby games, as we will call them modern games, but they'll be called niche or hobby games or have been, and with the mass market. And you could see that walking into a Target, you could see that walking into a Barnes and Noble. I've even seen some games literally in my Stop and Shop from Bicycle, the company that makes playing cards, because they make board games now. So there's definitely, and there's companies, Funko has gotten into the board gaming, and they have what are the name of all this? They have all these subsidiaries or partner, Forest Pruzan and what's the other one?
Is it Prospero?
Yeah, Prospero Hall. Thank you.
Yeah,
I can't keep track of their org chart at all, but they're all kind of making these modernish style games, and they're pumping them out. Like I know the Funko miniature game is a big one. And I'm to me, most of them are misses, but like Pan Am was a solid of a modern style game as I would have played last year. So
yeah, I have Pan Am. I got that for Christmas, I believe, and quite good. I like it a lot.
It is very good. It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about it. I think about it in that sense too, because it's you go to the store. The shelf is such a mix now, and you do have a Seven Wonders sitting right next to a chess as an example. Not exactly that, but like they are right on the same shelf. But Seven Wonders is certainly, not a pre-2000 game that you would have seen in a Target at that time if it had existed.
No, absolutely.
So I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah, one of the things I think too that's developed over time is, and I think it's interesting you mentioned Funko. I can't remember the woman's name who was on Boards Alive from Funko, because her name's unusual. It's like Fernessa or something.
Vertessa.
Thank you.
Ali.
She was talking about her first game was just a variant of Monopoly. Okay, I'm not slamming Monopoly. I'm just saying, most everyone grew up with with Clue or Monopoly, where you roll some dice and you move a pawn around, and that's just kind of, everyone knows how to do that, right? So just creating variants of that is what people know. All these games are starting to come out, that are a step beyond that, and introducing people to things to do that are something other than just rolling some dice and moving things around, be it more than Candyland, or be it more than, or 100 variations of Apples to Apples, which is Cards Against Humanity or whatever, and I think that's what's expanding beyond mass market, is introducing people to other things.
You mentioned too. I think this poses a good question for this conversation, is this idea of teaching the kind of pieces of puzzle, right? Like, so teaching the rolling of a dice is minor. You can teach them to roll dice, fairly simple. I talk about the fact that I've got a almost 3-year-old daughter. Literally Monday, she's turning 3. She loves rolling dice, right? She loves picking up things, matching colors. I teach her, and I did this with my son who's 7 now. I teach her this idea of this dexterity of just picking something up, placing it, right? So you teach some of these basic concepts. So a lot of these games that maybe we start people with when we're introducing them to a new game is teaching them maybe a subset of a style, right? Or a mechanism that we're going to do to play. So it might be, for example, a card drafting. I go obviously to Sushi Go is just one, like just the idea. It works really well. So in teaching, is that part of a process for you guys in the sense of teach a mechanic, or are you teaching around maybe taking a game to the table because the theme is going to interest someone? How do you kind of choose in terms of how to bring that?
I think it depends if you're talking adults or kids.
We could talk to both. I mean, let's
start
with
kids.
Adults.
I think you definitely want to familiarize them with the mechanical nature of what you're trying to. You can't just be like, oh, my kid's like superheroes, so I'm going to bust out this complex, I'm going to show them Marvel Champions and expect, my young children to follow along with all this cards on text and all these effects. And it's just not, they'll like the pictures on the cards, but you're going to wind up playing it mostly solo with them, pointing at the characters here and there. So yeah, I think you have to start with children by building them up, giving them that base of the mechanisms that you're working on. And also, again, I'd mentioned Haba before. They're language independent, their games, and I think that's a big thing because games with tons of cards on text just are harder because kids struggle to read, and they'll misread things, and especially if it's a game where you have cards in your hand that you have to read. I know I thought Smash Up would be good to teach my daughter when she was younger. And then I realized how much text is on those cards and how complex some of the interactions are. And we've come back. She's older now. We've come back to it and she likes it. But it was definitely a learning experience for me in that, there's way too much text for her to read on her own and to be able to manage 6 cards and figure it out.
I want to just bring up this comment too. Ryan joining in. Thanks for popping in, Ryan. Toy factor is very important for kids. Material and I love to stack pieces in animal on animal.
I could not agree more. I have so many games. I have Ice Cool and Slide Quest and we have Animal Upon Animal and we have Junk Art and what's the one with the Talk Woodman. We have them all the Toy Factor games, and they love them all.
Yeah, I think about the fact too that when I think of these games that I want to play with my kids, I want to start them young, but in the right way. And it's not, again, I don't go back and knock a Candyland or something like that, because I think it's interesting. We enter a dangerous territory and we just start saying, yeah, but I wouldn't play that. Because ultimately you mentioned in the beginning, there's important things that you learn. Just the simple idea of playing a card, moving a piece. These seem very simple, but on paper to us, but we're adults. The basic action is an important thing for them to learn. And I will note, you mentioned Marvel Champions. It's really interesting. Kids are different, right? So that's the other piece of it. My son at 7 has a very good memory. So he can play Marvel Champions with me because he knows what every one of those Spider-Man cards does. I taught him his deck. I know that's not the case for everyone. So he can play Marvel Champions with me, but I would not expect every 6 or 7-year-old to go play Marvel Champions. He just happens to have that good memory to know. I'm also not having him play any other deck. He's playing the same deck. He learns the deck, he plays it, and that's how he's been able to do it. But to assume every child is the same is a mistake I see some people making. And just across the board to say, oh, this game is great for kids. Okay, take a step back. What kids are we talking to, and what games have they played prior, and what are the skill sets they've developed? That's at least part of my recommendation process, or when I'm trying to think of what game I want to teach someone.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But circling back, you had said to teaching adults. I do think you can definitely teach based on well, not teach, but introduce people based on theme adults, because if you have an adult that's into any particular, IP, intellectual property, they're going to be more drawn to trying a game that uses that.
Yeah.
But then you just run into the fact, like, good games don't have to be super immersive, but they do have to, the theme has to make sense with the mechanisms of the game. Like, there are some games where it's intuitive what you're doing, feels like what you should be doing. And then there's other games where it feels like they slapped on this theme at the 11th hour to try and sell some extra copies, but it doesn't make any sense with what you're doing. And those, I think, if you're trying to bring someone in, like let's say you have a big Harry Potter fan in your life.
I was just going to say.
And then you're going to show them this game. It better make them, at least remind them of Harry Potter and make sense for what they know of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
If it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Good point.
So my adult game group is my lunchtime group. We've been playing, I don't know, for about a year at lunch. And so a couple of them have played, like, they talk about Tan all the time, but we can't play that at lunch. And in the before times, we played in person, but now we play on BGA mostly. But, my limits are, what can we do in an hour? What's going to be fun? What can play with like 5 to 7 people? But I've been doing what we talked about, since most of them are fairly new gamers or inexperienced gamers, introducing them to concepts like you mentioned, Sushi Go, I Split You Choose with New York Slice. They were saying, what was that train game? When you talk about Ryan talked about Toy Factor. I got out Colt Express just because of the Toy Factor. I was like, this looks awesome on a table. It's a lot of fun of moving your little meeples around. And the whole concept of programming just blows their mind. They're like, what are we doing here? So those are always fun.
And circling back to the concept of teaching mechanisms, I like in my mind, I think every mechanism has like that one game that simplifies it like the most. Like we've mentioned Sushi Go probably 4 times now, because that has to be the simplest drafting game out there, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I love Seven Wonders. Good luck trying to teach someone that's never played a game that has a million icons on it. It has a complex, round structure.
Mm-hmm.
Sushi Go is like a distilled essence of drafting. And I don't love Sushi Go. It's fine. I'll play it. It's quick enough. But if I want to introduce it to someone, that's the better place to start. Even if in my heart, I would rather be playing Seven Wonders because, there's more to think about. But that what works, what sets my brain off is going to be the same thing that detracts someone that's new to it. Because all those decisions that I'm like, I enjoy puzzling over is going to be overwhelming to someone that has no idea what's going on. So
right.
That's one of those things you work them up to it.
Right. When you get to Seven Wonders, you say, hey, remember when we played Sushi Go? Well, we're going to add this, right? Or
and here's a sheet with 100 icons on it.
Yeah. You're going to go left, and then you're going to go right, and then you're going to attack the guy next to you. And yeah.
It brings up also the point of just thinking about your audience. Who are you teaching? Who are you playing with?
Mm-hmm.
And also being mindful of what world am I living in, right? And stepping out of your own shoes for a moment. And
that's hard.
It is challenging.
You know what? Because when you're at a convention, right, you can literally put any game down You know, you could slap down a Vital Lacerda game or whatever and know that all the other people at the convention are totally down to learn it out of the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to think about it because you're like with your people as far as, you know, gaming goes.
Yeah.
But when you're in your day-to-day, you know, well, especially in the before times, that's not going to be the case. Oh, we're having another couple over because the kids are having a play date. And then, they like to play dominoes. So, I'm not going to throw them a Vital Lacerda game, right? Or, aunts and uncles are coming over. So maybe you bring out a card game that's kind of reminiscent of, some trick taking or some shedding games that they would be familiar with from a lifetime of, playing with a deck of bicycle cards, where, as opposed to more modern games. But it's all where they've come from, because trying to explain trick taking to someone who even could be a gamer, but that didn't grow up with trick taking games is hard. I have a buddy of mine who's a gamer, and he's even designed games, published games. But I tried to show him Skull King, which is a pretty simple trick taker, and he was like, "What?" He's like, "Well, what do you? I get these cards. Are they all worth points?" Like, no, that's just one trick. Mm-hmm. And then I was realizing I was using the terminology of trick taking. He's like, "What do you mean sloughing?" I was like, "Oh, you're getting rid of cards because you don't want to win."
I think you and I had both the same issues with the crew. It seems like it's like the most basic of trick taking games, right?
Except
start off with you just have to get one card.
Huge twist to it too.
I know.
The thing about the crew, the only reason I like the crew so much is the intro levels of the crew are how I taught my wife trick taking.
Right.
But then it ramps up fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. By the time you're on mission 10, my wife and my son play it. I'll be honest, it definitely is going to take us longer than if I was playing a trick-taking game with both of you. And that's just the simple fact that they're still adjusting to learning the trick-taking piece, and then the cooperative part. Versus, say, there's a Fox in the Forest, which my wife and I play. Fairly straightforward. It's one-on-one with each other. But the crew is what got her the basics. And then Fox in the Forest came out actually afterwards for us. So that is the way I got Fox in the Forest and some other ones to the table. I forget the other one. There's another one I have. I think it's Gnome King. I can't think of a name, but it adds in now the scoring changes every round. So like there's a lot of variety of these trick-taking games, but the crew, fantastic for those intro levels. If you have it, you can use it for that, I think. But
that's funny because I found it to be the opposite. I had to show my wife what is it? Oh hell! Is that the class? It's Oh hell, right?
Yeah,
that's a classic when you play with a deck of cards.
Yeah,
I had to show her that one competitively first. We tried the crew and we crashed and burned so hard, and then I was like, let me try and show you what an actual classic trick taker is, and we played Oh hell, and then she's like, oh, I get it. Because, I was like, all right, she's trying to win tricks for her, and that's how she scores. And then we went back to the crew. I'm like, all right, now the twist is that we're all doing this together. But again, just like you said with your son in Marvel Champions, every different, and that's why these large platitudes are so useless.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the best gateway game? For some people, it could be totally different than for other people.
Well, I always laugh because a lot of people will say, I have heard, for example, Stone Age comes up a lot as a worker placement game but I would argue for some people there's a lot of decisions to make in Stone Age. So for some people, that's just going to be honestly overwhelming as their entry level.
I'm not sure there is a worker placement game that I love as a gateway game personally. Although I would lean to Lords of Waterdeep before I hit Stone Age. But again, there's still a lot going on in Lords of Waterdeep that I wouldn't want to try and have someone be the first hobby game they played. But personally,
I think Stone Age is a little easier, but we've actually played that at lunch. It's amazing how fast that plays on BGA.
Yeah, because no one wants to hold the smelly cup. Oh, you're saying online. Okay.
Yes. I love the smelly cup personally. But but anyway, it's amazing because it does all the math for you, so it plays actually pretty fast.
I got you.
It does take a little bit of a learn, but
what is your teaching? What are both of your teaching styles? If you had to define your teaching style, I mean, I just for myself personally, one of the ways I got into it, I have an educational background to begin with, so for me, wanting to teach games was part of it because I wanted people to play games. I wanted them to have fun. So even the pitch was, hey, this is a fun game, right? And I tried to target the people who I was saying that to. But even doing the library club at my local library, we were deciding what games we wanted to play, and then we put information out about the games. And we made one-sheeters for most of these games. And we'd say, okay, here's the things you're really going to need to know, and you have access to it right there because they're not going to want to look at an instruction manual. So trying to put information in front of them on teaching, depending on the game, the first play may or may not be as competitive. So trying to make sure the fun is always there was, I think, one of the greatest challenges. You got into some harder games, but we taught everything from Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne. As we got later in, we even were able to teach to some people who are a little bit older, Tiny Town. So we had a lot of fun with it, but the teaching style was very much, I didn't want to completely hold their hand, but I wanted to put all the resources in front of them. That did depend on the audience. Certain events were more designed for adults, other were designed more for the kids. So that did also change the approach for me personally in the way that we focused on the club.
Well, to drill down on actual teaching, I can't take any credit for this. I believe it was Gil Hova who introduced me to this teaching method. I could be wrong. This was years and years ago, but I believe it was Gil, and it's to teach it backwards. And that is to say, this is how you win the game. So if you are, let's say you're teaching Lords of Waterdeep, you would say, this is a competitive game, and the player that scores the most points will win the game. The game is going to end after, well, now I can't remember, 7 rounds? 7 rounds, which may or may not be correct. Please don't quote me on that.
I think that's about right.
And every round, you're going to try to earn points by placing your people on the board and getting resources and translating those into contracts. Because I know a lot of people will put out a game, we'll use Lords of Waterdeep again, and they'll be like, okay, here's these people you get, and you could put them on these spaces, right? And this space does this, and this space does this, and this space, and it's like, oh, cool, that space gives me 4 money. What does money do? Yeah. Or that space will give me, these little white worker guys. Well, what do they do? So I feel like if you go backwards to forwards, or top down, it would be another way to look at it. By showing the big picture and then drilling down to the specific parts, it'll all make sense better by the time you get to, all right. And remember, we mentioned those contracts that'll get you points. These are how you get the white workers to fulfill those contracts.
I can agree with that.
I do like the teach it backwards approach because, again, how do we win? How do I win is the grand question. There's a point to playing, you're aiming for a victory. So how do I win, or how do we win? Obviously, based if it's, competitive or co-op.
And that's a huge, I'm going to, a quick side note to, I believe it was Origins 2 years ago. What was the word game from CGE? Remember we played a Letter Slam?
Oh,
letter.
CGE was the one with the strawberry on it.
Yes, exactly. That one. What was the name of that one? See how Letter Jam.
Letter Jam. Letter Slam was.
I'm mixing up Word Slam and Letter Jam. Anyway, so Letter Jam was their new release, party-ish game, and I had went to their demo area. And I want to point out, this was not Paul Grogan. He was actually stuck with a passport issue, and he didn't get to train up the team because he's an excellent games teacher. That's his bread and butter. So I would just want to clarify that this was due to the absence of Paul and not in any way Paul's fault. But the demoer sat me down and started teaching Letter Jam and didn't tell us if it was cooperative or competitive. And I think most people will assume a game is competitive unless you tell them otherwise. The default is most games are competitive.
Yeah.
So she had us making words, and I'm trying to make a hard as hell word because I'm like, well, I don't want Zach to guess this, you know. So I have like Onyx, you know, and and then it's like, all right, and now, yeah, and like 15 minutes into it, when we were getting nowhere, she's like, and you want to be able to guess each other's words because it's cooperative. I was like, and there it is.
Yeah. So Eric, we can't probably say it on the air, but Eric made a much easier word for me to guess when we played.
Very phallic word.
I had that actually at PAX Unplugged. We were learning. We were being taught Reef, and it was not necessarily a co-op versus not co-op, but the end game scoring, just as an example, was not clear. And a lot of the
and that's crazy because that's a fairly straightforward, simple game as far as scoring goes.
Well, yeah, but you know what it was? There's a few really weird cards in there. And so they didn't like what should have been the way I would teach Reef now, say, here's the basic scoring cards. Here's how just give them the idea. Right. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the first times I had played it. And I just remember there's one card that one of the cards has a symbol in the middle. Right. And it's the highest stacked of that next to the surrounding color. But it's as simple as that sounds. My goodness, if you play with someone who has never played or has not played a lot of games, the card is extremely confusing.
I remember
that's not the most confusing card. There's another
symbology is just tricky in general, right? Like I appreciate that they want the games to be, to be language independent, makes their lives easier when they go to translate them, but symbology is difficult to do well.
No, it's true. And I guess, do you guys teach yourself your own games? How do you learn a game? What's your process?
Well, I think we talked about this on our last show. I think we did. I'm a kinetic visual learner, right? So I have to have the game in front of me. I've got to set it up and I've got to play it. And I usually play 2 players, even if it has a solo mode. I'll play it 2 players until I know how to play it. I got to move the pieces around. I got to see them moving on the board, and get a feel for how it actually plays, so I can teach it.
I'm similar to Patrick, but I have less free time. I'm also a kinetic learner. I'm a how it works like visual person. Like our friend Brandon he'll go to sleep. He has a stack of rule books by his bed. You could give me the rest of my life. I couldn't learn the simplest game just from reading the rules without being able to see the components and to be able to fiddle with them. But I learn really well. Like I can watch a video, not even necessarily like Rodney makes great videos, Paul makes great videos, but I don't need to watch a 25-minute how to play. A good portion of that is how to set up the board anyway, which I can figure out from the rule book. But it's just like watching. Like even like a Rado video where he'll just take the first 2 turns. I can usually catch the game from just watching how a round plays.
Yeah. And then going back to the rule book, I'm fine.
Yeah, and using the rule book
and then
as
you get
a
the
reference,
nuance.
Because a lot of the times the rule book's not super clear on the game flow, which is a failing.
Yeah.
They'll lay everything out for you, but not really give you, how it's supposed to flow, which is what a good rule book does. And once I have that, it'll make all those little rule things click. You're like, okay, because this, then this, I got it now.
Any rule books stand out for you guys actually that just do a good job? I know you said less on. You're more about the connect, obviously playing of it. But is there any rule book that you?
I will note. I'll probably get this wrong, but I believe it's Ravensburger where they have these little boxes off to the side. Oh yeah, so it's Aaliyah, but they're Aaliyah and Raven. I know it was in the Castles of Burgundy rulebook, which is Aaliyah / Ravensburger, so maybe it's Aaliyah.
It's the first thing came to my mind.
Yeah, they have these. So they have the full rules on the left, and then on the box on the right are these breakout boxes with like, if you've played before, these are the things you're going to need to remember. And that to me, it's like the bullet points of the meat of the things is perfect.
Yeah,
because that's also the stuff you're referencing when it's like, oh, how many cards do we get for those little things.
Yeah.
The little I always do. I will say in a rule book, I enjoy reading rule books, but it's less so to learn the game. I just genuinely enjoy reading them for some reason. I like to try to explain it, and then I realize I can't. What I can say, what I do like is that when they have that 1-page reference section, like here's some really important stuff
I'm gonna add on to that. I like when it's on the back of the rule book, so I don't even have to open it up.
Turn it over.
Exactly, and I can't think of a good example off the top of my head.
Seven Wonders Duel has a sheet in it, but I think they also have.
Yeah, I think that sheet's separate, right?
They have it separate, but they also have, if you turn it over, the book over, they have Baround setups on the back.
Okay, yeah.
So I often, I only became more addicted to this game recently. I think I've played like 10 games on Board Game Arena in the past like week. But I will say that game in particular, on the back of the book, the rounds are set up because for those who don't know board game, not but for those who don't know Seven Wonders or Seven Wonders Duel, I mean, it's set up a little bit differently in each age. So you do need to, make sure you set up correctly. So it's nice to, if you don't have it memorized just yet, which I'm sure,
No, I've played the game a dozen times. I couldn't tell you what those 3 setups are.
Yeah.
So it is nice. That one. I only know that one because more recently I've played that. I will note, because we were talking about this earlier, and it kind of is coming to my head now. One game that I would like to say for teaching worker placement that's interesting. It's a little bit more because it does involve drawing cards and building combinations, is Dragon Realm. It's a fun game that I play with the wife and son. But you are placing workers after you're combining cards in certain ways, either all the same type, all the same number, or 2, 3, 4. And then you get to roll dice and then place a worker. It's not actually worker placement in the sense of worker placement, but it's still teaching this idea of placing a piece down onto a spot with the idea. It's actually, I guess, more area control in the sense because you want to have the most people there. But it is a good one for teaching some fun mechanics of a game. So I do enjoy that one. I want to mention it. One of the things we've talked about is the co-ops. When you've taught, do you think, because I've seen different opinions on this, and so I'm interested in what you both think. Do you think teaching someone co-op is something that should be done after having played something competitively? Do you think there's a different order? It doesn't matter the order as long as you're teaching them, kind of all the mechanics prior. How do you kind of feel about that co-op? Because I know a lot of people try to say, well, maybe we can start with a co-op game to teach you some of the basics, but I still go back to the mechanics and that conversation we had about how do each of these games play? What puts these games together and makes them work? So interested how you feel about co-ops versus teaching competitively.
I'm gonna leave this one to Patrick because I don't like to teach people co-ops because then I have to play co-ops.
Yeah, I think it clearly depends on the player. So I enjoy co-ops because I like to have fun, unlike Eric.
I am exaggerating. There are
Yes.
co-ops I like. I'm a competitive person by nature.
Right. So no, I think that really, you talk about teaching, right? So we didn't really talk about teaching styles a little bit, but part of my teaching style is to try to step back and to let the players explore the game and to try to help them have fun, right? And I think co-ops allow you to do that. So the players can either engage as much as they want or as little as they want, right? So my wife gets intimidated by games sometimes, some of the more complicated games. And so she likes co-ops because, she can turn to me or whoever else is at the table and ask for suggestions on how to play
without breaking the code of what's going on because there's no competitive element.
There's no competitive element. Or she can say, no, I've got this, step back, step off and take her turn. And gosh, I don't know how many times we got, back to Prospero Hall, we got horrified because we're huge monster movie fans, but she adores that game. And we've played it
too
50 times probably. And she's always asking for us to play that game. And I enjoy it. And it's a good game. And, there's other co-ops that we don't play, but, on the complete flip side, I try to introduce my brother who's a sports guy and he's a cop and, I tried to introduce him to a co-op, and he's like, "What the heck is this? Who wins? I'm not playing this, you know." And I was like, "Well, you and Eric should get together and play something." So
I think about Horrified. Horrified is a hit in our house too. We like
Yeah.
Horrified a lot. It definitely has hit the table more than a few times. Sometimes I think a thematic game like Back to the Future, whether it's, I have not played it, so I can't comment. One of the people who've been on the show quite a bit, Anthony, Board Game Dads, loves the Back to the Future game. I know. So it's something I want to play, but that's something where I'm like, oh, the theme, we can watch the movie. Like, I like also the idea of when there's one of those that is easy enough to get to the table and teach them around the theme, then it's watch the movie, go do that. Like, I love that idea of connecting some dots. It gets people excited. But I do think with co-ops, the one thing is there are also some games which an interesting method I've tried in the past. It does not always work, but it is when there's a co-op that can be played competitively too. And some games are designed with this now. And I've tested out the theory. So I'm not really sure because it's only just begun to be tested, but some of these test it with doing the co-op version, right? And we play together and then we go to the competitive version. And then there's sometimes slight differences in the rules, but then it's easy to teach. We're just teaching the differences, not the, obviously the things that we already know. So that's one thing I've tried too. More games have that now than in the past. For me.
Summit is a good example of one that works well with both.
Yeah.
And the people I played it with preferred the cooperative, and I preferred the competitive. But
another great one. I think you talked
has the expansion too that has co-op. That I don't have that expansion, but I've heard good things about that co-op version. Some have told me the co-op version is better than the regular version.
What game?
Orleans.
Oh
yeah.
I have not played the co-op, but I do enjoy the regular version.
Well, I don't know.
I'm not buying an expansion for a co-op.
I don't know if the co-op's better, but some of the content in the expansion's better. Anyway, I think you mentioned on a previous show.
Wait, we can go on a tangent about stickering games if you want. We're talking about Orleans.
Shadows over Camelot has a co-op or a trader variant in the co-op, which
makes it semi-cooperative.
There could be a villain.
You technically could make it fully co-op, I guess, but I wouldn't want.
Well, there's a full co-op version, and then you can add the villain card into the rolls when you shuffle it, and then you're like, well, maybe one of them is bad, or maybe there isn't, or then you could guarantee that somebody is a villain.
I also don't think I'm starting anyone with Shadows of Camelot because that is it's. I don't think I start them with that or Battlestar. Because it does depend on the person though. Because if it is some competitive, Eric, I think this is a great point. Talking about not loving co-ops, but if someone is competitive, I'm not going to start them with a co-op game because they're not going to have any. I'm going to completely make it go. Why the hell would I want? Kind of like what you just said, Ben. Why the hell do I want to play this?
But have you played Shadows, Eric?
No, I haven't.
See, I think you would like that.
I don't like. No, I don't. See, I've played Dead of Winter, and I've even been given the trade, not intentionally, but I've drawn the trader card, and I still didn't enjoy myself. That said, I also don't love zombies, so that did nothing for me.
This is you got to have the Monty Python reskin, and you get to say all your favorite Monty Python lines, but there's just a lot of that. Oh, why did you play that?
I will point out that I won when I was the trader. So it was like one fun moment when I was like, oh, we're losing. I'm like, no, we're not losing.
You're losing.
Y'all lost. And I won. And I flipped over the hoarder or whatever it was. So but it was like 2.5 hours for that one fun moment. That's not a good cost benefit analysis.
Okay. We digress.
Yeah, we're way off the rails here.
So let me pose, before we end up wrapping up this conversation, I first want to say if I know Ryan's there for sure, and I appreciate you joining in. But if people have questions, whether you watch this video live or after the fact, and you've got something to add, feel free to drop in the comments. We'll definitely get back to you. If there's any particular questions based on what you're hearing, please let us know. And a friendly reminder that you can tune into Patrick and Eric on their podcast. I'll make sure there's a link in the description after this, as well as I definitely would love for you to subscribe to the channel if you like what you're seeing. But to the regularly scheduled program here, the thing I do want to say is we're talking about this phrase entry level. I'm realizing now that's a term, or entry level, or we've said a few different versions of this. But for me, when I'm introducing, I will say I introduce games and say I say it in the sense of I think you're going to really enjoy this game. It's not like we're using that terminology to say this is an entry level game. Do you that I don't come in with that kind of speak, right? And I try to pose the question to them of what kind of things do you like, or and I try to learn. What is your approach when trying to, recommend a game to someone to make sure you're maybe making a good recommendation for that individual? Patrick or Eric?
Well, a lot of that is you got to pull information about like what have you played, what kind of games do you like. If they don't have a history, then you just introduce them like we've talked about of just some simple concept games and play 2 or 3 of them if you can with them until you start to get a feel for it. Like, and they'll, I've gotten feedback with my group over time of, hey, we really like that, let's play that again, or we didn't, I don't want to play that again. So we've gotten enough plays in of games that games are starting to be requested. So that's good.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it really just comes down to knowing your audience, because, and I know people will spout off the same gateway level, entry level games, but if you're dealing on one end of the spectrum with young children, it's going to skew totally different to like your or the toy factor or what they even can play, and you're skewing to people that are coming from a background where the only game they've played is chess, but they've played a lot of chess. Then I can immediately go into a space where these are like chess adjacent games.
Yes.
Like the Duke or like War Chest or like Onitama. And it's like, you're probably going to like these because this is the same headspace that you've already played in with chess, the 2-person direct conflict. Then, there's people, like, more of the Care Bear players that aren't going to be digging that. And you're definitely not going to suggest, this is a game where we're going to take each other's pieces until one of us is killed off. It's not going to be a thing that interests them. Or then you got your people that come from playing the card games, like I mentioned earlier, and then there's new modern fun twists on those card games. So it's really just knowing who you're playing with, and then I know a friend of mine is a gamer, and he's also like a computer engineer, right? So he was introducing his friends, but they're like MIT level, computer scientist guys. So he just started out with games like Brass and Steam.
Wow.
And it hit off for them.
That makes sense though, because
it does, because these are math people, like these aren't, like, oh, we're not gonna show you King Domino. That's and I say this as someone that loves King Dominoes. There's no shade at King Domino from me. But if people are into complex workings of, computer science stuff, then maybe they want to be into something more meatier.
Yeah.
Even on the younger level too, it's like we didn't do Queen Domino, we went right to King Domino. And I know Queen Domino.
I think you're switching those two.
Oh yeah, well but the point is, like, I think sometimes it depends. When I'm thinking about the audience too, I'm asking the questions, I'm posing it. One of my least favorite things is, and this is on a very much the gamer side, because these are like board game groups on Facebook or something, and someone says, "Hey, I need a recommendation for a game that I want to get someone," and then it's like this long. There's nothing else, and then the first thing I always pose the question is, "What do you like?" or "What does this person like?"
Yes.
Like. The only worst thing than that to me is when they post a photo of a game and they don't say what it is, and I'm like, what game is that? That's really interesting. But that's another thing.
I just did that. Sorry.
But you know what? When someone does that, and you're going to get the same list of games, right? If someone posts, what game should it'll be whatever the hottest new, in the running for the, the Spiel des Jahres type game is. Like, you'll say, get Azul or get Tiny Towns,
So I can't tell you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say those are good generic recommendations, but that's all they are. And without knowing more about the person, I guess they're good starting points. Try one of these and see where it goes. But if you have more information about it, we just did a show on racing games. Like if you are be showing a game to someone that's into horse racing or into, stock car racing. Like, yeah, why? There's no reason you wouldn't start with like a game like Long Shot or Downforce. There's no reason whatsoever. They are intuitive, simple enough games, and they have that built in. Like, okay, you know how racing works, you know how this game is going to end, and you have an idea of how you're going to win because it's a game that emulates something that you're already a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the positive, and the thing about that to me is there's a positivity to it, because the one thing that I hate to see, and this is what I try to do, and one of the reasons why I started even doing anything on here and wanting to have guys, you both on for this conversation, is sometimes someone just may not like a game, and that's okay.
Yes.
I am it's, and who knows me knows I just do not like Caverna. You cannot tell me to like Caverna. I have tried it. I tried it again recently. I don't like Caverna. I like a lot of games by, in that series of it, I've never actually played Agricola actually, but I will just say I didn't like Caverna. I did not. And that's okay. It's the same way I have this deep respect for Settlers of Catan, but at the same time, if you said, let's play Settlers, yeah, I'll probably play it, but I'm not going to be rushing to bring out a copy at my house. And that's okay. With these new gamers or these potentially new gamers, I think it's okay if they don't like it. And you just need to figure out, okay, you didn't like this.
There's enough games out there.
Yeah.
For everyone.
What didn't you like? What is it? And then you find out what they didn't like about it. That can help you decide the next game just as much as what did you like. So to me, that's an important part that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough. So that stands out to me personally.
Yes.
I
just wanted
go ahead, Patrick.
I just wanted to explain one thing. Here we are talking about all these kinds of themes and things, like styles of games. So my wife came down. We had a little getaway where we went to a cabin and we got brought a bunch of games to play. And she came down to my game room, which she rarely does, where my library is. And she's like, "How are these organized?" I'm like, "Not really." And she goes, "Well, I like this one." And I like this one. And she goes, "Well, can we put a little shelf together of the games I like?" So before long, we had a little section of gardening games with pretty flowers on them.
And we have another into organizing your whole game collection.
But no, we just have one shelf that's hers. But it's got the flower section. It has one section with like pets and cats and dogs and things. And the other one are games that have tiles in them that she likes to play. There's other games with tiles.
Shelf for my wife too.
I know.
My wife's a veterinarian, so we have the animal games.
So they're not mechanics. They have nothing to do with mechanics. They have to do with I guess not even theme, but I guess theme, like location.
Gardening is a theme, right?
Yeah.
Gardens, that's how Succulent came into my house. I saw it. I said my wife's going to love this game. She loves Succulent. And it's a great game for.
We got it.
Play. I played it. I remember at Tabletopia. That's where I played it.
I did as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think about that. I'll share this, Patrick. My shelf upstairs was a board game shelf, and it was a bookshelf. And the conversation with my wife, this is the short version of it, goes, "There's a lot of books on this shelf." I'm like, well, "Yeah, it's a bookshelf." She goes, "Yeah, I know, but we don't read these books. Can we donate them to like the library or something and just put board games up here?" And I'm like, "Yes." So the board games that are upstairs are the ones that get played constantly. And yes, it's a Dragon Realm or some of these, there is a Taco vs. Burrito on there. We play Taco vs. Burrito all the time. But Carcassonne, the big box with all the expansions that we own, is up there. It's an eclectic mix, but it's only started because of one game. So the biggest thing I say is you find the one game, it gets them interested in potentially another. They're not necessarily going down the rabbit hole like some of us may go. And I know, Ryan was here earlier, and Ryan's got 3 times as many games as me. That's not necessarily going to happen, but they're going to have this understanding and interest. And now you may get them to the table for more games, and they advance and advance and advance. And I don't necessarily go, I will say, to the junior edition of the game either. Oftentimes I'm just teaching the right game. I've never actually bought a junior edition of anything except for a copy of Bananagrams that I have that was free and given to me off a curb pickup. So
sure.
So for me, I mean, I don't know. I just point out the fact that starting with one, they don't like it, go back. That's my method. At least that's the method to my madness. Teaching is another thing. I think we can all continue to learn to teach better, but games are fun. And to me, that's what it's all about.
I have a final point about teaching, and it's teaching adjacent, but this is my one plea for anyone watching this. Don't bring a game that you want to teach to people to game night and shrink wrap. You would think, I know you're giggling because you would think, like, who would do that?
Oh no, I know people would do that.
But a buddy of mine, and again, this is a guy that designs games. He works in the industry, and he's local to me. And he brought over Captains of the Gulf. I mean, we're not even talking.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, like, we're not talking like one of those small box, like The Mind. You know, you get a pass if it's something that's a deck of cards. That could be in shrink or a little roll and write. Fine, but yeah, he brought Captains of the Gulf. He's like, "You want to play this?" I'm like, "Yeah, but not tonight. Like, that's gonna need to be punched. You know, you're gonna have to sort stuff." And my addendum to that is sort stuff for the play. Like if the game is such that everyone starts with an exact set certain things, set it up so you can just like, oh, here's the blue player, here's the red player, here's the green player. That's all your starting goods, your starting cards. You know what? You know, it makes it it makes the play go faster. It makes the teach go smoother.
I know it does.
You know, and I in the same way, I get organizers for my games whenever possible, because anything that makes the game set up quicker, anything that makes it more intuitive and pleasing. Like I have a Quacks of Quedlinburg is a good example for all of that.
Oh yeah.
I have an organizer because that game's got a lot of. It's not a complex game, but it's got a lot of just stuff.
Yes.
So if I can pop that out on the table in under 5 minutes, it's going to be a lot more enticing for me to get my wife to play it with me than if I have to dig through a box of, you know, components. I was at Eric Martin had did that video where he just swept the whole game into the box with nothing bagged or sorted. Like, no, I'll never get anything played.
I think Quacks is a great example because Quacks is easy to teach. For them, I think for the most part, I think it's a very accessible game. But my God, setting it up, just if you did not have them sorted out in the right way, that can take you 15 minutes, and then by the time you set, like people are like they've moved on. Especially if you have it's like, okay, we're good, we're gonna do this now. So,
yeah, they're already watching an episode of something on TV, and you've lost them. Yeah,
and then I start having to put the damn box away. But it happened with Deep Blue actually. Deep Blue is a game we had on a 10x10 list last year, and honestly some of the setup at Deep Blue I didn't have it optimized, and I'd get it to the table and then be like later and then be like, oh, we're tired, we're going
as someone that scuba dives, I had been mildly interested in getting. Is it good?
I like
worth checking out? I
like it. I would even say if we're ever able to get more local to each other, I'll just let you borrow it because it's one of those ones that I think you need to play it. I do like it with 3 or 4 players, with 2 players, Deep Blue, because you could take your scuba divers or your boats on different paths. It's very easy where some people are going one way and some people are going another way, and there's
no interaction.
Yeah. With 2 players, the interaction, which is at the heart of this game, like the interaction is fun. Okay. You all get to go on the dive, but one person is controlling the dive. So because you can move a space over to join a dive. So if you start going 2 directions,
You've lost that. I got it.
It loses that.
But look, so not an optimized pandemic game, that's for sure.
No, I would say not an optimized pandemic game. I will say this, guys, before we go, as we're coming up on an hour here, I just want to say thank you to you guys for joining. Thank you for everyone who tuned in live, and thank you to everyone who watches that after the fact. If you have questions, let us know. Anything that you guys want to share, anything cool coming up that that you want to let everybody know about, or just something cool that you've seen. Like if you got nothing to share, something nice that you've seen kind of in the past 2 weeks in board games, or just a great game that you like.
You want to talk about virtual?
Yeah. So Eric and I get to go to Granite Game Summit every year. And of course, this year it's virtual. So lots of people get to go to that. And we did a live
to just butt in. It's actually going to be Granite Game Summit and Stumptown Game Summit and Reunity. I think it's called. So they're taking all these small local cons that they can't have. And Stumptown is all the way over in Portland, and Granite Game Summit is in New Hampshire. Reunity, it might be in Massachusetts. I'm not sure, but they're taking all those and they're just saying, hey, we're doing one conglomerate virtual. Now go on, Patrick.
Yeah. Sorry. So it's going to be on Discord. It's Discord's live now, so if you get Evite ticket now, you can go on to Discord. But anyway, Saturday the 13th at 11
of March.
we have our Patrick and Eric show. We did a live show last year where we recorded with a group of people. We
and
tasted
ate lousy cereal.
We tasted really weird cereals, and that was a lot of fun. And this year, we're sure to have our one fan show up to the live show on Saturday morning and join us to play cartographers and anything else we can figure out to do live.
Yeah, and we have Tim Vernig, who is the media person from Thunderworks Games, which publishes cartographers. He's going to join us, and he is going to help run a digital game of cartographers. So even if you don't have the game, you'll be able to print off a sheet, and you'll be able to play cartographers, because we wanted to optimize this, for a digital audience.
Which is a fantastic game, by the way. I love it.
Oh, I totally agree. And then we were thinking, depending on how time runs and all that, there may be some other roll and writes. We'll see if we can't run also.
Yeah.
After cartographers, but we're definitely going to start out with cartographers, and we'll have some roll and write fun, because that's a thing that seems to translate pretty well to playing over the computer.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I will definitely drop a link for that, by the way, in the bio, so everyone can in the description, so people can go check that out. So make sure you get me that. The one thing I did want to share for those tuning in live, we're gonna have another tabletop talk coming up on March 6th. That's going to be a board game talk about accessibility and really the accessibility of board games. And that's going to be really interesting. A few other things coming up. Mike Trias is coming up on Creators Corner on Thursday. And actually, Anthony from Board Game Dads is going to be coming on to talk about some of our favorite games that we have played recently or in the past few years to kind of showcase different mechanics and introduce modern games. So going off the theme of today, that's going to be on March 1st. And last but not least, Marvel Monday, the first one that we're going to be doing with Ryan Espin, who was joining us earlier. Well, I'm talking with him on Monday night, so you can be able to tune in to that. So a bunch of other stuff coming up. You can check the YouTube channel for that. Upcoming live streams are showing up there. Most of the stuff right now is upcoming live streams. When the pandemic allows, I will be doing certainly playthroughs and stuff like that. But there'll be a way that happens. That'll be a little bit different, which I'll be able to share eventually. So excited about that. But want to thank you both for joining. Thank you so much for your time. Please go check out the podcast. Go listen to Patrick and Eric, and go definitely check them out at the con. As I said, I'll drop the link in there. And for everyone who joined today, thank you for coming aboard the Tabletop Express. This has been a great time, and I will see all of you very soon. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.